Can we adapt to life now and in the future by drawing on knowledge of the past?
How can communities come together to crack societal challenges?
And how are we going to feed an ever-increasing population?
We'll be looking into all this and more in the 10th series of 10 Things to Know About.
This week, we're exploring what we'll all be eating more of in the future, from increasingly plant-based diets to seafood. With a growing global population, we need to produce more food that is healthy, sustainable, and available for all. Fish is an essential protein source for billions of people, but we need to balance the demand for seafood with the health of marine ecosystems. With over 3,000 kilometres of coastline in Ireland, it's perhaps surprising that we don't eat more of what's literally on our doorstep.
Eating fresh seafood, looking out over the water, all of this harvested only a stone's throw away, it doesn't get much better than this.
Global consumption of seafood has more than doubled since the 1960s, and in Ireland it has more than trebled. I'm in County Mayo to meet Richard Donnelly. He's passionate about seafood and a strong supporter of aquaculture.
Aquaculture is the term, like farming on land, we're farming in the sea. So what we want to do is to create a controlled environment in which to give the best nourishment, the best environment for these animals growing. We're predominantly focused on 3 species in Ireland. The main one would be salmon. Organic salmon is what we mainly farm, and then we have oysters and we have mussels. But we also do some trout farming as well on the freshwater systems.
How much seafood do Irish people eat in their diet, and how does it compare to Europe?
We are lower than some of our neighbours. We have about 24 kilo per person per annum, but not terribly low compared to the UK, Germany, Belgium, countries like that. The number one species we do eat is salmon. What we're trying to do is get people to consume more shellfish. We have an abundance here, but our neighbours in Europe tend to be very fond of them, and so a lot of them are exported.
What is the reason for that? Is it a cultural thing, or is it a historical thing? Why don't we eat more shellfish in Ireland?
It tends to be a cultural thing, but we do have a very long heritage of eating shellfish in Ireland. We go back 5,000 years,
Wow.
And there's oyster mittens all around the country.
Is the global demand for aquaculture growing?
Absolutely. What we've seen in recent years now is that aquaculture represents a higher proportion of seafood than the wild capture fisheries.
As we look to meet the nutritional needs of a growing global population, one form of aquaculture stands out as a particularly sustainable solution: mussel farming. Louis Malloy manages a second-generation family-run mussel farm in the waters of Clew Bay in County Mayo.
Blackshell Farm started in 1983, so the business has been going for 41 years. Originally, mussel farming was an extremely labour-intensive process. It was all done mainly by hand, so using floating structures out at sea, bring a boat out there, haul the rope in by hand, shake it off, and hang them out again by hand.
So how has mussel farming changed over the past few decades?
So I'll show you here, I have some kit. This is the type of rope we use. This is a hairy rope, and then this is just a standard bit of sewer pipe, and then this is the cotton mesh that we produce ourselves actually here in Ireland.
Okay.
When we're out in the boat, we'd be pouring mussels into this pipe, and then the rope and the cotton will be coming off, and they'll biss up. They'll produce a little thread that will attach themselves to the rope in a matter of hours. So like, you come back next day and this cotton is redundant. It rots off in about 4 or 5 weeks. It doesn't really harm them while it's there, and then once it's gone, the mussels grow and feed. They've settled in their millions. So each long line of collectors that we have out might have 1.5 billion mussels on it.
What do mussels eat? Like, what are they feeding on?
So they're filter feeders. Here in Clew Bay, a lot of our nutrients actually comes from the land. So we've got a lot of nice, lush, green areas around us, and that brings a lot of nitrogen into the water. So they're great for stripping out excess nitrogen in the water, so they'll always increase the water quality of a bay.
Mussel farming is very good for the environment. About 60% of a mussel's weight is its shell, made mostly of calcium carbonate, which locks in carbon and removes it from the atmosphere.
What about the future of this industry? Is it possible to make it more environmentally friendly?
There is an environmental cost to using cotton. We're working with BIM and a company in Holland to try and develop a biopolymer made out of potato starch. Ideally, if that gets off the ground, you're talking about using potatoes that are grown in Europe to make a biodegradable starch and then make a yarn out of it and get rid of the cotton.
It's clear from chatting to Louis that innovation is sort of important in the aquaculture industry. But we're not just talking about shellfish. Today, farmed salmon is one of the most popular seafoods in Europe and North America, and globally the amount of seafood being farmed now surpasses wild catch. However, there has been some criticism of this practice, and so minimizing environmental impacts and ensuring the highest level of animal welfare are crucial to the industry. I'm meeting Joanne Gaffney to see some salmon farming in action.
We have such a spectacular backdrop behind us, Joanne. What is it about Ireland that makes it a very attractive place to farm salmon?
Well, first of all, the species of salmon we farm here is a native species, so the salmon are adapted to Irish conditions. Also, west coast of Ireland, we have quite high tidal ranges and strong current flows, which means that you've got a fit fish swimming in natural waters that it has evolved to grow in. So it's a really natural, suitable environment for these fish.
What percentage of Irish salmon is organic, Joanne?
It's 100% organic. So all our farms, everywhere in Ireland, farm organic salmon.
Joanne is taking me out for a closer look at the salmon pens, where farming comes with its own challenges.
In recent years, we're noticing that climate change is posing a threat to farm salmon. The species of phytoplankton and zooplankton that occur in the water, these are microscopic plants and animals, are changing. And as the populations change, we're seeing them stay in the water for longer than historically would have been in place, and we're also seeing new species come in. These species have the capacity to irritate the fish and cause damage to their gills.
What are we talking about? Algae, jellyfish?
We're talking about jellyfish, we're talking about microscopic algae, we're talking about microscopic animals that feed on that algae. What you've got here are salmon pens. What you see, they're basically icebergs, because what you see on the surface is just a tiny fraction of what's going on down below. 10 kg per metre cubed of water is our stocking limit for organic principles. So that's 1% of fish, 99% water. This site, or the two sites that are beside each other here, have the capacity to take about 500,000 fish.
Wow.
So you're talking about a value at current market prices of about 20 million for the fish that will be coming out of this site.
20 million?
Yeah, this is an incredibly valuable, precious resource. All the value is below the water, so it's in a farmer's best interest to protect these fish, to look after these fish, to nurture these fish.
But if we're in an open environment like this, how do you protect the salmon from the sort of threats that you're talking about?
Well, what we've done and what this project is about is essentially doing what farmers have done for millennium. We're putting a fence around the farm. But in the marine environment, our fence is essentially a curtain of clean air. We've anchored a network of leaky pipes to the grid that holds these pens in place, and it creates a curtain of clean air that flows from the seabed up to the surface. These microscopic plants and animals and larger zooplankton such as jellyfish don't have directional movement. So they're moved by the currents and moved by movements of water, and the bubble curtain creates an effect that is essentially a barrier to their passive movement through the current.
The system uses data buoys to monitor changes in water conditions, such as rises in temperature or chlorophyll, which can indicate the presence of algae and harmful species. Biologists can sample the water to confirm the threat and then activate the bubble curtain.
What stage is this technology at?
It's used widely in Chile and in the southern oceans, but when we were taking this technology to Ireland, we realised that the systems they have didn't work for us. So therefore, we took the Chilean technology, and through a series of trials, we've slowly developed the system until we're at a stage now where it's ready for commercial deployment.
As well as embracing technological innovation, researchers are investigating ways to reduce the environmental impacts and improve the sustainability of salmon farming. Pauline O'Donoghue is working on a project in which waste from one species could become food for another.
I'm currently working on IMTA, or Integrated Multitrophic Aquaculture. IMTA is where you farm different species on the one site, where they have a symbiotic or a good relationship with each other, where one fed species creates nutrients in the water that will then be used and absorbed by other species in that site. We conduct the IMTA research out in Lehena Pool in Bertaboy Bay in Connemara. This is a sheltered site, about 23 hectares. We use salmon as our fed species. Uneaten food or waste from the salmon are then absorbed by scallops and the native oyster and 2 species of seaweed.
Adjoining the salmon pens are a number of other aquaculture species, from lumpfish that help to promote a healthy environment to hanging baskets of shellfish that collect nutrients flowing out of the salmon pen.
We carried out a modelling exercise to see where the nutrients flow with the currents and prevailing winds on that site. So the outcomes of the project have shown that per 1 tonne of salmon protein produced, their environmental impacts can be lessened by up to 25%, which is great.
If I told you there was a new high-protein, low-carbon food source, you'd be all over it, right? Well, the thing is, we already have it, and it's literally all around us. As island dwellers, we may need to start thinking of a future with a lot more seafood in it.
With more and more of us turning to vegetarian and plant-based diets, there is growing demand for plant proteins such as pulses and soybeans. The EU imports huge amounts of this stuff, a lot of it as a source of protein for animal feed. These imports have major environmental consequences, not just because of the carbon footprint, but also because of the deforestation that takes place to make way for soya plantations. So the search for more sustainable sources of protein is well underway, and the food processing industry itself may provide part of the solution. Brewing is one of the largest global food and drink industries, generating a significant amount of waste. But could this waste be food fuel of the future? Gaurav Rajuria is a biotechnologist in UCC. Gaurav, how do you go about turning a leftover into a new source of protein?
We are utilizing a byproduct from distillery and brewery sector, okay? And if you look at this is the byproduct that is coming from brewers or distillers after making beers.
So this is what's left over after you've made all your lovely beers, all your lovely drinks, and normally that goes into the bin?
Some of that goes for animal feed, but most of that goes for in landfilling, and that creates a lot of problem for these distillers. For other people, this is waste, but for us, this is just a good source of carbon or sugars. And because we are developing a biorefinery system based upon microorganisms, so this is a good food for growing those microorganisms.
Just like using yeast to make bread or bacteria to transform milk into yogurt, Gaurav and his team use a process called fermentation. They use the distillery byproduct as food to grow microorganisms in a fermenter that can then be used as feed protein. So in here, all these microorganisms are munching up all the sugars, going, this is delicious, I love this, let's grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, exactly. And after, let's say, 24 to 48 hours, and they start growing like this.
And are these the source of protein?
Yes, we can go up to 70% of protein.
70%?
70% of
wow.
protein, which is much higher than the traditional protein source from soya or from fish meal that we are using in our animal feed.
So at this stage, you're basically tweaking the recipe, are you, to find out what do the microorganisms like to eat at the perfect temperature for how long?
And RPM, pHs, and perfect temperature for cultivating them. And we are basically crafting a recipe for them.
Although the project is still in its infancy, the researchers now have access to technology that can move things to the next stage, as they plan how to scale up the fermentation process for commercialization.
The best part of all of these control processes is basically you get the protein in 5 days.
5 days.
As against if you talk about traditional agriculture where you might take 6 months to a year to get the protein.
What do you end up with at the end? What's going to be fed to the animals?
This is the protein.
It looks like kind of a combination between popcorn and scrunched up paper. What if you were to say, this is kind of an unnatural process, growing things in a lab? What's your answer to that?
We are not going to launch the protein like this because we are going to test this protein into animal feed. We will formulate the feed with this protein and we will test those feed onto pigs and chickens, and we will see whether these proteins are showing the same health impact or the growth impact on animals like soya does.
And we rely on microorganisms for our bread and our beer and our yogurt and all those kind of things, so maybe this is just a new way of doing things.
I would say it's a more sustainable way to do new things.
Is there a possibility that this protein might be used for human consumption in the future?
That's our plan as well going forward. We will test it in animal feed and then parallelly we will also test it for human consumption.
Harnessing the power of fermentation to grow protein sustainably without agricultural land means that the research being carried out here could play a really important role in shaping the future of food.
A ripe, juicy apple. What could be nicer? How about a ripe, juicy apple grown here in Ireland? We spend about 135 million euros a year on apples, most of which come from places like the UK, France and Italy. Fewer than 10% of the apples that we eat here in Ireland are grown in Ireland, but that might be about to change. James O'Donoghue is one of a small number of commercial apple growers in Ireland.
These apples they're all eating apples, these ones. They're called Red John of Prince, John of Gold, and they're for the retail market, the supermarkets of Ireland.
So if I buy an apple that comes from Ireland in the supermarket, there's a pretty good chance it came from one of these trees.
Exactly. If you see a lovely, bright, shiny apple, you know it's from me.
How well suited is the Irish climate to growing apples?
Irish climate is quite difficult to grow apples in some instances. Historically, Tipperary, Kilkenny, Waterford were the traditional growing areas, as was Armagh, as you know, is the apple county of Ireland. If we can pick the right varieties, we can definitely grow very good apples.
But not a lot of apples that are sold in supermarkets come from Irish growers, is that right?
Yeah, in Ireland at the moment we have between 120 and 130 million euros of retail sales, and we only produce 5 million euros worth of apples domestically. So there's a huge potential here, and if we can get the variety selection correct with the support of the supermarkets and of the consumer, of course, we think that we could probably produce 40 million euros worth of apples in time to come.
There's clearly a ripe opportunity to take a bite out of Ireland's 95% apple import market, while also supporting local producers and reducing global food miles. At Chagas Research Centre in County Carlow, Alberto Ramos Luz is working to adapt the way we grow our apples. How are the apples currently grown in Ireland?
Yeah, they are grown in a system that we call three-dimensional system. It's very similar to a Christmas tree. Mm-hmm. We have the tree with branches growing all of the directions.
What's the alternative?
We built this trellis system, shaping the trees in a two-dimensional way. We can see here, we have a palmetto tree, where we are going to develop the branches just on directions, like here, for example, and we won't have any branches coming from these directions. So by the end, we are going to have a wall of fruits. If we look from above, it would be very flat, maybe 30 centimeters wide.
What are the advantages of growing apples in this kind of way?
Yeah, there are a lot of advantages. After the system is established, it's much easier to do all of the managements in the orchard, fruit thinning, pruning and harvesting, even have the possibility to use mechanization. Light is very important. With the fruits being more exposed, we would have a much better quality, much better color, more sugar.
Does a system like this cost a lot of money to install?
Yes, between 50,000 per hectare up to 120 1,000 per hectare. But when we plant an orchard, the orchard should last between 15 to 20 years.
Okay.
And when we renew the orchard, we can take out the trees and use the same system again.
So it's a long-term investment then, is it?
It should be paid by year 5 or 6.
Alberto and his team are exploring different ways of planting, spacing, and shaping the trees within the 2D system to achieve the best results. In April 2023, they planted a test orchard with 48 apple varieties to evaluate their growth, performance, and disease resistance.
Yeah, we are just early at the beginning. We planted this orchard in April 2023. It's on the second year now. Another good thing of the system is that we can start producing fruits really early. We hope that in 5 or 8 years we have a better package. We can teach the growers or offer to them different ways to grow that are more efficient. And maybe in 20 years, instead of offering 5% of the market, we go to 20-25.
Alberto is collaborating with Irish farmers who have installed the 2D trellis system at their own orchards. And back in Tipperary, James is one of those farmers. So James, why did you decide to put in this system?
Really, an apple farmer is a farmer of light. And this system will actually maximise the light content that the apple receives. There's other very important reasons as well, like we get a much higher output per acre.
So hopefully if we can adopt systems like this, we can make a brighter future for apple farmers across the country.
Oh, definitely. And there's another other advantages too. The carbon sequestered by the orchards is brilliant. Like it's 10 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year.
Wow.
So we have a low carbon footprint. And of course, Irish apples, they have a unique flavour that you won't get anywhere else. So, and as the old saying goes, an apple a day will keep the doctor away.
We all want fresh, healthy food that's easier on our pocket and kinder to the environment. And when it comes to apples, one of the ways of doing that is to give our own growers a bigger bite of the Irish market. That's our 10 things to know about feeding the future. Next time, from natural solutions to the latest technology, we're exploring ways we're living with flooding.